Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Andy and I'm really happy that you decided to join me today. So today I'll be talking a little bit about my favorite books of 2024, my 5-star reads basically of this past year. We have some interesting books on this list. All of them I really liked it. A pretty international list as well. Each book it's like from a different country, so that was interesting. So let's go right into the first one. So I'll be talking about these in the order that I read them. So the first one on this list will be the first one that I read, not necessarily a ranking, because all of these will be 5 stars. So yeah, the first one on this list is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. So I'll be reading the summary of each one of these very quickly, just so I don't ramble too much about them. And then I'll talk a little bit about my impressions and what I liked about them. So if I'm looking down, it's because I'm reading from my computer. So The Bell Jar details the life of Esther Greenwood, a college student who dreams of becoming a poet. She's selected for a month-long summer internship as a guest editor of Ladies' Day magazine, but her time in New York City is unfulfilling as she struggles with issues of identity and societal norms. So that's the gist of this story. So, The Bell Jar. This book has my heart. I think that's the best way to describe it. I knew of Sylvia Plath, but I didn't really know much about the story of The Bell Jar. I knew that this was the most known book of hers, but I knew close to nothing about her life or about the plot of this book. I knew that it talked about mental health in some capacity, specifically women's mental health, but I didn't know much more about it, and but that was enough to make me want to read it. And I'm so happy I did. It's a very short book. I didn't even know that. I thought it would be longer, but it wasn't. It was quite short, but it's so full of depth and there's so much to talk about this book, but I'll try to be brief here. I think the best part for me, there's many things that I really liked, but the best part for me, the thing that really impacted me was how depression is depicted. Um, it's depicted in a very realistic way. It's not romanticized. It's not toned down, and I think because of that, it can be maybe a little hard to read sometimes, depending on where you are mentally. So I do advise anyone who wants to read this to check the trigger warnings. But I really liked how it's very realistic the way Esther's struggles are. Um, I think one of the things that made me love this book so much and why it impacted me was that I did see myself in Esther quite a bit, especially with how she views women's role or place in society. She has a lot of thoughts and a lot of worries about that. Um, it's crazy because this book, it's not, you know, new in any way. It was written in the last, century. But it's not that long ago that you can't relate to her worries, especially as a woman. And yeah, I saw a lot of. She has her thoughts and her worries sometimes They're very witty, almost a little, it's very like, I don't know how to explain. It's very like to the point, and maybe a little cutting, a little, I don't know how to explain it, but I just really, I don't know, it resonated with me quite a lot. She's not a perfect person whatsoever. She has her flaws for sure. She can be quite judgy, I think, sometimes. But I liked that because it seems very realistic, you know, even her flaws. I actually did not know uh, before starting the book, I didn't know that this is deemed as a semi autobiography or an autobiography. And I found that out when I was in the middle of the book, especially like right into Esther's deep struggles and depression and everything. And when I learned about that, it broke my heart in tiny little pieces. I'm not gonna lie. Because I didn't know, like I said, I mentioned at the beginning, I did not know much about Sylvia Plath's life. I did not know how her life ended. I did not know that she died very young and how she died. And knowing that this is seem this is deemed as like and knowing that this is deemed as somewhat of an autobiography, I don't know, it really made me quite sad. But I don't know, I think it also ties into being a very realistic depiction of those mental struggles that the character has. But yeah, that was the first one, the Bell Jar. I definitely want to read some of her poetry next, some of her Sylvia Plath's poetry. That's on my TBR um, for this year for sure. Yeah, moving on to the second book on this list. So also a 5-star read, but I read it after because we're going in order, right? So I read it after the Bell Jar. This is The Braid, or La Tresse in French. And this is written by, it's either Letitia or Letitia Colombani. Colombani. Watch it both be wrong. So, summary. In this unforgettable international bestseller, three women from very different circumstances around the world, one in India, one in Italy, and one in Canada, find their lives intertwined and discover what connects us across cultures, backgrounds, and borders. So, yeah, that's the premise of the book. This was a very impactful read. I really liked the different POVs that we get from each character. So we follow these three women, right? These three characters that have very different backgrounds, very different realities, and very different problems. And I really liked how we follow each of them. We get a little bit of one of the characters, and then we move to the next point of view, and then we get a little bit of that character, and then we move to the next, and then we keep doing that, like alternating among the three of them. And I really like that. It keeps the story like going, like the flow of the story quite nicely. And I really like the way the story and struggles of these three women all come together. It was really nicely written, that part for me, because there's a whole theme that is like woven into these characters. That's like woven in the book and connects all of them, and that was really nice. This was actually one of the books I read in French in 2024, and I was really happy about that. And yeah, I already have the next one from the same author on my TBR as well, because I really enjoyed her writing. I really enjoyed how she writes each of these women's. realities and struggles, because they have their own reality, right? Their own privileges in a way, some of the characters. But one thing that they all have in common is that they're women, navigating this society and this world. And even though there are some struggles that are very specific to each, you also have that common, that thing in common that they all have. I really, really like this author's writing. This was the first book I've read of hers. And I'm really happy that I really liked it because I want to read the next one. And I'll also read it in French. So I need to build my TBR in French as well because I want to read more this year. So, okay. So remember how I mentioned that this is quite an international list? So the first one is American. It's from an American author. The second one is from a French author. And now we're moving on to a Brazilian author. So the third book, my third 5-star read of 2024 was Here the Whole Time. And this was written by Vitor Martins. This is also our first male writer on this list. So the summary of Here the Whole Time is Felipe is fat and he doesn't need anyone to remind him, which is, of course, what everyone does. That's why he's been waiting for summer, a break from school and a classmates who tease him all the time. His plans include catching up on TV, finishing his TBR pile, relatable, and watching YouTube tutorials on skills he'll never actually put into practice. But things get a little out of hand when Felipe's mom informs him that Caio, the neighbor kid from apartment 57, will be spending the next 15 days with them while his parents are on vacation. Felipe is distraught because A, he's had a crush on Caio since, well, forever, and B, Felipe has a list of body image insecurities and absolutely no idea how he's going to entertain his neighbor for 2 full weeks. Suddenly, the day ahead of him that once promised rest and relaxation end up bringing a whirlwind of feelings, forcing Felipe to dive headfirst into every unresolved issue he has had with himself. But maybe, just maybe, he'll manage to win over Caio too. So that's the premise. I was surprised about how much I loved this book, and I'll tell you why. From the premise, right from the summary, you can tell this is like teenagers, right? First love sort of thing, they're in high school, etc. I usually don't gravitate towards books like that. It's just not my thing. But I was surprised. I was really surprised. And it's also a romance in a way. And even though it's a queer romance, which usually that's the only sort of romance that I'll try reading. I'm not a big fan of romance either. This was a really, really good time. I really liked it. So, okay, so I think the first thing, maybe the main thing that made me really like this was how I, again, related to some of the main characters, Felipe, right, his name, struggles and worries. I don't know, I just felt so much for him. With all of his self-image issues and how he views himself and how he thinks other people will view him. His just relationship with the world in a way. So I related quite a lot to that. Also, the mother-son relationship, it's great in this book. The relationship between Felipe, the main character, and his mom is so wholesome. It's so nice. It's also quite refreshing because, usually in stories where you have a gay character or queer character in any way, the parental relationship many times is quite difficult. To be fair, that's just how it is in real life as well, so it makes sense. But it's not always like that. as well. So it was refreshing to see how his relationship with his mom is. She's a really great character in the book. And another thing that I really liked about this book is that this story is full of heart. This story deals with somewhat, heavy issues like um, body image, internalized homophobia, acceptance, parental figures, and like the relationship between, parents and their kids and whatnot. But the writing in itself, it's still light. Um, and you actually I left quite a lot while reading it. Oh, technically, I listened to it. I listened to it on Audible. Um, but you just left with some of Felipe's thoughts and his shenanigans because he is a teenager, right? So there's some moments where he has these like awkward moments and he doesn't know how to act, and it's to me was funny because of the his tone and the writing, obviously, but also just remembering how I was at that age, it was quite it's quite funny sometimes. Like, yeah, if that had happened to me, I wouldn't leave the house probably for a year. But now being a little bit more older, you're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But I understand why it would it be for him at that age, especially with all of his struggles and whatnot. But yeah, the writing was quite nice. Surprisingly though, even though this is full of heart and I related to a lot of Felipe's struggles and insecurities, what actually made me cry was the author's note. It wasn't even in the book; it was the author's note. So the author wrote like a short note at the end, just about the importance of the story for him and how it came about. And I don't know, it was so genuine and I just felt like so much for what he was saying that's what made me cry. So the next book, the fourth one on this list, is The Lantern of Lost Memories by Sanaka Hiragi. Don't know if I pronounced that right. I'm so sorry. The summary of this book is: from acclaimed Japanese author Sanaka Hiragi comes a heartwarming, life-affirming novel about a magical photo studio where people go after they die to view key moments from their life and relive one precious memory before they pass into the afterlife. So, quite an interesting premise there. So, I found this book randomly on Kindle. I was just searching some Japanese like contemporary books because I'm currently learning Japanese and I wanted to dive a bit more into this literature that I know close to nothing about. Um, and I just came across this one. I liked the name, The Lantern of Lost Memories. It sounded very interesting. And when I read the summary, the premise of it, I was like, oh, okay, interesting. So yeah, this is about this like transition period between death and the afterlife, right? And in this story, this looks like a photo studio where you have this character that's just waiting for you there, this man, and he asks you to just do this sort of collage, this sort of kaleidoscope of your memories, of your best memories. So you have to go through them and choose the ones that you want. You have a chance to look at it once before you actually move on to whatever's waiting you on the other side. We don't know. They don't tell us. But it's a very interesting premise. And we also follow three different characters here as well. So we have different POVs. This is a very touching story because it talks about death. It talks about regrets, right? Life regrets and the big what ifs of life. And it makes it makes you wonder about like, oh, how would my collage of memories would look like? What would be the last few photos that I would see, right? The last few memories, because the photos are basically the memories, right? And each character that we follow, we have three, like I said, they're very different people. Now all of them are the greatest, like morally speaking, but it's still very like touching, and you still get like so wrapped up into their lives and their stories, and to just understand their choices and their views, and like I said, their regrets and whatnot. It's a very, maybe it's weird to say that it's a feel good. It's not necessarily feel good, it's just like puts you in a certain mood. Like you contemplate about stuff, but not in spiraling type of way. You know what I mean? So the last book on this list is Welcome to the Hyunam-dong Bookshop by Hwang Bo Yum. This story, the summary, it follows the story of Youngju, who has turned the corner on an unsatisfactory phase in her life in order to fulfill a dream to open her own bookshop. So, I found this book when I found the last one that I talked about. I guess Kindle was like, hey, you're interested in some Japanese literature? Why not some Korean literature as well? And I was like, okay, it talks about books, bookshop, let me read it. And I was surprised, again, about how much I liked it. Because it was also a 5-star. But yeah, we follow again a female character. She's the main character. Can you tell that I love stories like that? She is a very lonely character. She is coming from this fresh-ish divorce. And she lives in a society where, you know, it's a bit more traditional in a lot of ways. Also, she wants to just open a bookshop, which is a dream that she had since she was a child. But due to everything, societal pressures and just her life, she never thought she could actually fulfill it, you know? And now she's here as a, I don't actually know her age, but I'm assuming she's like in her 30s or 40s or something. I don't remember if they mentioned that in the book. But, you know, it feels like a moment in her life where she should have things kind of figured out, but she doesn't. So we have a lot of that theme in the book. It also touches on the conflict between having a dream and making it a business and making your job, right? Because, like I said, she has this huge passion for books. She really wants to just own a bookshop, and this will be her life's work. But it's also a business, and she also has to keep up with that. And, you know, it's that whole, it has a little bit of, not commentary, but it touches a little bit on that idea of like, are bookshops kind of like dying? Is that a business that still works? Because, you know, the digital world and everything. And she wants to believe in that, but she's also quite realistic about the world, you know? So that's another thing that we have here. It's also really nice to see the community that starts to build around her bookshop and around her as well, which starts to break a little bit of that loneliness that I mentioned, that we see and we feel a lot coming from her. She's a very interesting Youngju. She's a very interesting character. And one thing that I really like about the writing here is that those struggles and her story and her background and everything slowly unravels. Like you slowly get to know little by little each chapter. And that's usually how it goes, but I just mean like the pace here in the writing was really nice, because sometimes it can be too slow and then you're hit with a bunch of character background and information all at once, or you learn everything about the character in the first few I was gonna say episodes, in the first few chapters, and that's it, and you're kind of like, okay, then what now? And then you're not as interested in it. So I really want to commend the writer here, on that, on how she wrote that and the pace that she kept it. It was really nice. Like each chapter we got a little bit more of backstory and we got to understand and like put the pieces together of this puzzle that is Youngju. And we just root for her. You know what I mean? We just root for her. We just want her to succeed and to, you know, feel less lonely and to build better relationships, you know, nicer relationships with people that are actually nice to her around, you know, in her life. So yeah, I really liked this book. But yeah, I think everything I had to say, I said it. All right, so these are all of my 5-star rates of 2024. That was it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what were your favorite books that you read in 2024. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you soon. Bye bye.